Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is pollster and political consultant Frank Luntz. Frank, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, it's a privilege, and every time I do this, I get to meet with 50 or 60,000, sometimes 100,000 people who are enjoying these programs, so I appreciate that people are paying attention.
And they are paying attention. In our last conversation, we spoke 2 days after President Joe Biden stepped out of the race. We talked about the historic nature of the moment, and you said that because it was an unprecedented time, we have to listen and learn. Now it's almost a month later. We listened. What did you learn?
I learned that voters wanted an alternative, and are glad to have an alternative between rehashing 2020 all over again. I learned that younger women who are so eager to participate in this election because they like the choice that they have now, that they've been energized. It's completely changed the makeup of the election. I learned that Republicans were as likely as not to capture everything when we last talked, the White House, the Senate, and the House. Now it is as likely as not that the Republicans lose everything come then. And I also learned that there are people who simply don't want to listen and don't want to learn and only have their own narrow points of view. That hasn't changed. And so I'm still pessimistic about where our country will be on election day and how we're going to proceed when one candidate wins and one candidate loses.
Who are those people, do you think, that don't want to listen, don't want to learn? Are you talking about candidates? Are you talking about pundits? Are you talking about voters?
It's all of us. I've been engaged in this email exchange to a well-known actress, very, very talented individual who doesn't like it when I'm asked a question by you, when you're going to do it. What advice do I give to Trump? What advice do I give to Harris? She does not want me to give that advice. She literally wants me to say to you, I can't answer that question because I don't want to help Donald Trump. And they don't understand that our job as unbiased, impartial observers is to analyze the situation and then provide guidance based on 35 years of working in this industry. So this is great because I'm actually going to send this segment, if you air it, I'm going to send it to her saying, what do you want me to do? Not answer a legitimate question, not take part in a discussion. We can't behave that way. What is wrong with us as a country? That we so demonize each other, so resent each other, hate each other, that we would undermine the responsibility of a fair and accurate media, that we would refuse to participate and answer legitimate questions. This is what I'm learning, and it makes me feel really bad for the future of the country, because we're not seeking to listen and learn. We're just seeking to promote our own ideologies and philosophies, and that's not what democracy is about. It just isn't.
I think that's a really good point. So I'll help you out here in this segment. I'll ask the question what your advice would be to Donald Trump, because let's just look back at the race in the past month. A month ago, before Biden dropped out, after the assassination attempt, right after the RNC, many would argue it would be Donald Trump's race to lose. He was surging in the polls. There was a united GOP. There was this sense of unity amongst his party. Now the momentum and enthusiasm aren't on his side. So A, what do you think has happened? And B, what's your advice to that campaign to get back on track?
It was his race to lose, and he lost it. But I've been told this, and this is from Governor Chris Sununu of New Hampshire, you can't have something stolen from you that you've given away. And Donald Trump has given away this election to Vice President Harris by how he's behaved, by what he said. Trump has the advantage on the key issues, inflation and immigration. Trump has an advantage on which administration was more efficient and more effective. But instead of talking those issues where Trump has the advantage and the ones that Americans care about, instead he's making personal attacks. He's alienating the very people he needs to support. He's even attacking other Republicans, such as the very popular governor of Maryland, the very popular governor of Georgia. He's making it impossible for Republicans to unite. He's making it impossible for people to look forward rather than look backward. And in the result, he's costing Republicans not just hundreds of thousands, but millions of voters. And in the end, he's going to have to accept, well, he won't, but that he's actually the campaign's worst enemy, and that he is actually Kamala Harris's greatest ally.
It's interesting.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's really interesting because more voters think that Trump is better on the bigger issues like the economy, like inflation, like immigration. He went on the attack on Vice President Kamala Harris's economic plan, said it was full communist, called her Comrade Kamala. Are those types of attacks effective, and what should he be doing then? Because you said he needs to talk about the issues. So how does he effectively talk about the issues?
They were effective 8 years ago, but we're not the same country. What got Donald Trump elected in 2016 will not get him elected in 2024, and I don't understand why he doesn't appreciate that, that he doesn't feel it. And Harris people want us all to be silent, and so as to not give any ideas to him, but you have nothing to worry about because he doesn't take ideas. They even surrounded him with food to emphasize just how expensive food prices have become. And instead of focusing on that, he starts his ad hominem attacks against her. In my entire professional life, and I'm old, I've never seen a candidate self-destruct as quickly and as deliberately as Donald Trump. That's not to say that he cannot win, but it is to say that clearly, as we go into the Democratic convention, Harris is winning, and it is now her campaign to lose, and so significant, and what your listeners and viewers will care about most, is it's not just a presidential race. Because young women are energized, because they are united, because it expands the electoral pool, it is now a 50-50, maybe even 51-49, that the Democrats take the House and the Senate with the White House. And that the significance of that success, if it comes into being, will change this country forever. Changes in taxes, changes in regulatory policy, changes in climate issues, changes in union relationships. A Democratic triple play sweep is not just about the vice president becoming president. It is about an entire issue agenda, beginning with the filibuster and ending it, continuing with the Supreme Court and expanding it, continuing with legislation on some of the social issues that have been so divisive that you will actually see a different country within a year. And I say this because it's my job not just to see where we are right now, but to project 3 months from now, 3 years from now. And what I see in state after state is a public that's rising up and saying enough. No more of this bullying, no more of this negativity, no more of this stuff that Trump had been saying and doing. And he desperately wants something else, something better. And when he attacks other Republicans, he guarantees that the party is not united, and that gives the Democrats a victory. So it really, Harris is going to need to send Trump a bouquet of flowers on Election Day, because it is he who's most likely to elect her president.
A Democratic sweep is not something we would ever even think or dream of up until a month ago in this election. But you did use a word that I want you to talk about a little more. You said that Donald Trump's self-destructing campaign, you thought it could be deliberately. Talk about what you mean by deliberate. In his campaign strategy so far that seems to be flat-footed has been called flailing.
Well, the campaign is not flailing, it's the candidate. And I've often been critical about people in my profession, as they should be with me, when we make mistakes. The Trump campaign actually is reasonably well organized. It's the candidate that seems to be getting it wrong. And we've been at this now. We know what works, we know what fails. It's as though he's ignoring and deliberately engaging in messaging that will cost him votes. He has to win Georgia. He lost he lost Georgia, and the two senators lost in 2020, both of them, because Donald Trump condemned them, condemned the process, said his election was stolen, and convinced people not to vote. I can give you the best comparison to explain where we are right now. Kamala Harris reminds some men of their first wife. Donald Trump reminds some women, particularly younger women, of their first husband's divorce lawyer. And that level of anger and that level of vitriol guarantees that a candidate loses. So I'll say this, I'll put it out there, and I'll be condemned forever if I'm wrong. But if Trump continues the same campaign, does this in the debates, does this in challenges to Harris, and maybe there'll be another debate. If he continues on the course that he's taking right now, she's the next president of the United States. It's very dangerous for me to say so on a program like this because it can and will be used against me in my professional life. But that's how significant his mistakes are, and that's how much damage they are doing. And you asked me in the previous question, what could he do? The answer is threefold, and it's three questions. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Did the Biden-Harris philosophy make inflation and immigration better or worse than it was under the Trump administration? And which candidate do you think is most likely to produce a meaningful, measurable, detailed plan of action for the future on immigration and on inflation? We know the answers to those questions. That is where Trump has his best lead. Ask it as a question, and voters will answer it in a way that Trump wants. Continue to make these ridiculous statements about race and gender and communism, and you'll lose. It really is that simple, and it really is that difficult.
To your point then, if those answers would be favorable to Trump, what does Kamala Harris need to do then? Because right now the Democratic ticket seems really high on vibes and a little light on policy. Jackie Heinrich of Fox tweeted this today. On the opening night of the DNC, Harris's campaign website has no policy section. There are bios for Harris and Walz, a tab to donate, a tab to volunteer, and a merch store. There's been a honeymoon phase. So when is the honeymoon phase going to be over? And can she survive that when she has to talk policy head-to-head to Donald Trump?
She simply doesn't want to. You've raised it. Exactly. You characterized this campaign, and it has put her in the lead, and they see that. And so they're not eager to engage in the discussion of policy. And quite frankly, if I were advising them, I'd simply say ignore the criticisms. You don't have to do a press conference. You don't have to go detail by detail. You simply have to show voters not only that you care, but that you're going to have a solution for them. That you don't have to dot the I's, you don't have to cross the T's. And by the way, what I'm advising is horrible for democracy, but this is what I would advise the candidates. And I think that viewers need to distinguish what gets someone elected versus what repairs the ugliness and revigorates our democracy and revitalizes our country, because they're two very different things. She's doing exactly what she needs to be successful on election day, and it's exactly what is inappropriate right now with our cynicism and our negativity towards democracy and towards the election. We need and deserve and have the right to expect solutions, and that's what she should be doing. May not get her elected, but that will make this country a stronger place to live in.
You brought up the topic of democracy last time and asked, what is the impact of this on our democracy? I want to pose that question again because I do think it's important. I think the solutions are important. Let's take the politics out of it, but it's so hard to do that because there's no election without the politics in it. But what's the impact on our democracy?
The impact is that we continue to cast aspersions towards each other because we don't understand each other. There's no effort to learn from each other. Fox News viewers should tune into MSNBC. MSNBC viewers should tune into Fox. Your viewers should tune into CNBC and Fox Business, and they should do the same with you. We need to get this variety of opinion. We need to understand how people think, how they need. Because if you write people off, if you simply shut them down, they will demand to be heard. They will make their voices heard, and you'll get another outcome like 2016. I have so many Democratic friends that come to me and say, I can't believe what happened. I can't believe he got elected. And I said to them, if you'd watched Fox, if you'd listened to talk radio, you would have seen what was going on, and just maybe, you could have prevented it. But if we're so narrow-minded, and I get really agitated over this, as you can tell, we're so narrow-minded that we don't understand how people live. And I always try to give you a statistic every single time we do these interviews. To me, the most significant statistic, and the people who make up this election, are the 23% of Americans who live paycheck to paycheck. They're not Republicans or Democrats, they're not liberals or conservatives. They're Americans, and they're generally struggling. And they see all these debates, and they hear all this yelling and screaming on TV. They may read it in newspapers, although they probably don't have time, because they're trying to make ends meet. And they're simply asking for someone to talk to them, to listen to them, to understand what's gone wrong with them, and to have a solution to make it go right. And unless we address these people, we're going to have I want to use the S show, but I don't want to get you in trouble. But we're going to have this is going to continue. And those who choose not to hear from those they don't understand and don't appreciate, just know that you're not part of the solution. You're actually part of the problem. And people like me are going to hold you accountable. We can't fix the economic hole in this country, but only if we understand what creates jobs, what gives us more opportunity, and how people are really struggling and they need a direction. And after all, your viewers are economic voters for the most part. We can heal what's dividing this country politically, but only if we seek to apply answers rather than air our grievances. The reason that we don't have peace in the Middle East, which is happening right now as you're taping this interview, is because they keep going back to what happened last year, 10 years ago, 100 years ago. It's all about addressing grievances from the past rather than finding solutions for the future. And I know that this is not really what you want me to talk about, but it's what I talk about in every interview. This is solvable. America is still a great country. We still have an incredible future if we choose to accept our responsibility to look past the mistakes and the grievances of today and focus on achieving meaningful, measurable results tomorrow. I'm not optimistic that we will do it, but I know that we have the possibility.
No, I think it's really of the utmost importance to talk about these Americans that are living to paycheck. I know how stressful that can be. And there's 23% of Americans, you're saying, that are living that right now. Do you think either candidate is doing a good job or a job at all of addressing their economic concerns?
Trump did it for 4 years and doesn't get credit for it because he insists on veering off to some sort of personal attack. Harris, the argument goes, we don't know what she did do because she hasn't really told us. We don't know where she stands on Biden's economic policy because she hasn't told us. So this is an example of where the rubber meets the road. Both of these candidates have the ability to speak to those voters explicitly. And the candidate that does so in that first presidential debate, when they're side by side, and you have Trump with his bluster, but his record of that the public thinks is okay, and Biden with his respect, but a record that the public thinks is suspect. In the end, Harris has to say where she stands, and she has to give us a solution to these. And frankly, in terms of public opinion, I don't believe that wage and price controls, I don't believe that telling companies that they are by law required to sell for less. I'm going to focus specifically on food. Everybody wants the workers in grocery stores to be paid more. What does that mean? You take it out of profits. Everybody wants food to cost less. What does that mean? You take it out of profits. Everybody wants these stores to serve people in underserved communities, the least profitable stores. Do all three of them, and you'll have stores closing. You'll have chains closing. You'll have stores going out of business. So, Madam Vice President, which is a higher priority to you? Serving the underserved, ensuring that workers get paid what they deserve, or ensuring that food prices are now affordable? In this economy, we can't do all three. Which one are you willing to give up? And the problem is no one's willing to answer that question. Neither Trump nor Harris is willing to. But that is legitimately the question. The answer will get you killed. But Americans deserve to know what your priorities are.
How important then is that presidential debate between her and Trump and her economic question there? Because we all remember the June 27th debate changed the course of history. So what are you looking out for when it comes to the economic questions on September 10th?
Who's asking the rhetorical questions? The one I'm going to look for first. Are you better off today? And will you be better off 4 years from now? Most important. The second is, how do we get there? It doesn't require you to dot the I's and cross the T's, but it does require you to talk about making tough choices. Nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to communicate that it's really easy. The other side got us into this mess that we're in, and they're going to make it worse. What are you going to do? What policies are going to create sacrifice for rich voters? Tell us the darn truth. And I believe that that candidate will be rewarded. But I don't think either candidate will do so. And the truth is, Republicans want the Democrat to sacrifice. The Democrats want the Republican to sacrifice. Independents want both sides to sacrifice, and no one trusts each other. And that's the fundamental problem. I believe that this debate will be marked by criticisms and attacks. And I'm waiting to see somebody rise from the ashes like a phoenix and say we deserve better than this, and then actually make it better.
Well, I really like that sentiment. But before I let you go, the DNC is officially underway right now in Chicago. What are you looking out for?
I'm watching the protests because I'm going to be there starting tomorrow. I'm seeing which roads are closed. I saw that how many were closed yesterday. It's impossible to get from point A to point B because of the protesters. People who come not to share points of view, but to monopolize the conversation, to demand to be heard at the expense of freedom of speech, of freedom of expression, of freedom of assembly. They do have the right to be there. They do have the right to be loud, and I encourage that right, but not at the expense of the truth, and not at the expense of others who wish to voice their concerns and their priorities. So that's the first thing I'm looking for, is how does Chicago handle it? The second thing is I'm looking for specific answers. Joe Biden's going to give a great speech about the past. Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, they're all great speakers. And they're all going to make people feel better about Harris. But I'm asking about the next election, and I'm asking about the next generation. Who is going to make a difference, an actual difference in our daily quality of lives? And who's going to restore and repair the breach that we are suffering from right now? These are things that I, as an academic, care about. I know that the media doesn't care as much about it, but it's now time for us to put aside differences and pull together. Because if we don't, we will all be pulling separately. And I'm not convinced that we can survive another 4 years of separate but equal politics, because it isn't equal, it's not even equivalent, and it's really hurting this country right now.
Well, Frank, on that note, I appreciate your perspective per usual. I appreciate all the wisdom you impart on me and our viewers. Have fun at the DNC, stay safe, and thank you for joining me.
It's a privilege, and you know that whenever you all call, I'm going to answer.